I'm so excited that it's your launch day. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, I love it. We actually launched yesterday, but this is still within the 24 hours of post-launch, and I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'll do a quick intro and then you'll do your intro. Does that sound good?
Fantastic.
And anyone in the comments, please comment where you're commenting in from or where you're dialing in from. I'm Jay Z. Welcome to episode 33 of Founder Design Thinking, where our podcast goal is to help founder unicorns who design think to grow their businesses. I also rap about product management, and I'm looking to use my experience launching AI products as a product manager for Gen AI software companies and creator marketplaces. I'm usually not so public about my job search, but I thought, Lisa, this was the best opportunity, the best podcast to be so public about it. And my call to action is connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Well, Jay-Z, we can definitely rap about your keywords and your specialization whenever you want. I'm happy to do it now, later, anytime. I'm an obsessed person when it comes to helping match talent to opportunity. So I
Thank
am
you.
Lisa Kostova, and I am the founder of CareerClimb. I'm a former VP of product and have been coaching mid-career and executive tech professionals, primarily in product, now for 3 years. And this year, I am building a series of courses and communities that are designed to serve, again, experienced tech professionals with more than 80 years of experience that are about to embark on a career jump or are in the middle of a career transition, to help them level up in their careers through community, through knowledge, through courses, through working together. So that's what I'm all about. And I just launched a concept, a series of characters that are called career creatures. Um, there's a lot of history, what they are, what they represent, how they can help you in your career. But I'm going to pass it back to you, Jay-Z.
Okay. Well, people in the audience, please comment any questions that you have for Lisa about career changes, career growth, job search. Lisa, I'll just ask you, how did you switch from being a operator to
Mhm.
being a solopreneur? How did you make that decision, as I see a lot of, VPs take that path in their career?
Yeah, I actually think of it like I didn't change much. My resources just shrank. So I had to be more resourceful. But again, my experience has been mostly in venture funded startups where resourcefulness is the name of the game. And even when I was working at a hyper growth company, Zynga, at the time it was just starting out, it was all about being scrappy and being creative and driving organic growth through content and through engagement. So, really, for me, I am seeing myself very much as an operator. And in fact, very quickly, early on in CareerClimb's history, I was offering programs that were being fulfilled by a team of contract coaches, fantastic people who I contracted with so I could kind of run a full platform. And again, I had a team of many, but they were not full-time employees, they were contractors. So I haven't really changed anything. It's just my resources have shifted a bit.
I see. So you're still employing other people and you still have a team. And you, as a VP, I'm sure were, mentoring, developing talent anyway. So it didn't really feel like a shift.
It didn't, except for, as I said, I just, my biggest challenge, and this is so true for so many entrepreneurs, is that um, I have a very clear vision of what my company is. It is the premier community and course platform with very deep IP for experienced tech professionals to really build their careers and excel their careers. And I have a vision of how exactly that looks, how big it is, how many people I'm serving and reaching in 5 years and in 10 years. And my biggest challenge is knowing the fullness of the vision. How do you decide which brick to lay first? And how do you, when you don't have a huge construction crew that's ready to build a whole city you're envisioning, how can you decide yourself with a couple of friends, contractors that are, helping you here and there? How can you, with a shovel, do the first dig and lay the first brick? And what does that look like? And how do you fund your growth organically? How do you bootstrap it? Because, anybody can spend a whole lot of time and money investing in product development, but that product development, in my case and in the case of many solopreneurs, has to have a relatively quick ramp to pay off. There needs to be a very kind of quick path to monetization, even though that monetization may not be the ultimate, full potential of it, but there needs to be a quick one.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can build without investors, if you can monetize without investors, even better.
Mm-hmm.
I started following you from the Women in Product conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciated how strong your voice has been on LinkedIn about LinkedIn special keywords and skills. So, this podcast is all about founders who pivot depending on what their users think. And I'm sure that, being product led, you've done that. So tell us about the bricks. Like, what did you prioritize first? How did you get to career creatures?
There's a kind of little known truth about building things as a solopreneur, which I don't think a lot of people recognize, or at least when they come to the decision point, they shy away from it. And that is oftentimes what we want to build, what we want to provide, what we want to sell is not what's most needed and urgent at that time. And so we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, what do we prioritize? And something that I realized about myself early on is that I love working with people, but for me, I'm about not just having impact at scale, but really harnessing the power of groups, of community. And so thinking about, groups, you always have to think about what transitions are people going through? What are the challenges that they're encountering at this point in time? It's just like a climb. I'm thinking of my business like a guiding company that guides individuals on their career mountains. And it's like the same way you wouldn't climb Denali in the winter. You're not going to be spending time and deciding to, do this. I don't know, like what would be the equivalent? Let's work on this kind of important but not urgent skill over here while everybody's losing their jobs, right? So kind of going where the need is and understanding that my commitment is to curate both from my own experience as well as from the experience of the community, the experience of other experts, from my own research, from my own understanding of the world, curate the solutions and the guides that my community needs the most. And this year has definitely been about marketing yourself, whether you're looking for a job or whether you're not, but are worried and want to make sure that you're being found by the right opportunities. And this is a huge shift, Jay-Z, because for the last 10 or 12 years, we have all been spoiled by thinking that recruiters come to us, that we don't have to even update our LinkedIn profile, that it's just we have all the choices that we have. If we apply, we hear back. If we are interested in something, we get considered. We don't have to even have the right skills for the job because they'll train us on the spot. That has changed. Now the power dynamic is reversed. And now we need to, rather than complain or lament or live in the past, we need to understand, okay, how do we become effective? How do we market ourselves in this new environment? Because there's still plenty of opportunities. I have clients who are getting found, who are finding jobs, and they're doing it by understanding exactly how they market themselves. What is their lane? What is their value add to a company and what type of company? And it's best to be an extremely good fit for a handful of people and companies than it is to be an 80 to 90% fit for everyone, because then you are getting lost.
I went off mute and then I went on mute again. I'm back. So that's a really good point about specialization. I love the post that you've had recently.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think you've publicly said that posting about your skills, like the structured data on LinkedIn about skills, has been a priority over Career Creatures. But Career Creatures has been a long time in the making. So
yes,
tell us about that. If it was an early brick, why you waited till now and why now is the right time.
Yeah. Well, Career Creatures has again the background of these characters, and there's 7 of them. Think of them as archetypes of blind spots and habits that I have witnessed firsthand with the people that I used to manage as direct reports in tech, as well as now with over 110 clients who have gone through my months-long coaching programs, plus have been in months-long executive development programs, and some people who've worked one-on-one with me as an executive coach. So this is a very large pool of data. Yes, it has been skewed towards female, which is kind of interesting because right now I'm definitely serving both men and women, but still I have found there to be repeating patterns. And earlier this year, I kind of started typecasting them and symbolizing them with these animal-like creatures and qualities. And the funny thing is, I always have known that these creatures are out there. I've never asked myself, hey, what should this be? Should this be a cat? Should this be a tiger? Like, they just came to me. And I turned around and I went to look for an illustrator, and this was so interesting. I had 175 illustrator submissions, and I picked my illustrator because he really got the vision, and he really had in his mind, was able to show what I had in my mind. And that's really, really, really rare. He was the only one of the 175. But the reason I conceived them at first is because I found that clients are blind to some sabotaging behaviors that they have, and B, that they tend to feel bad when these behaviors get pointed out and blame themselves and judge themselves. And I wanted for them to develop a relationship with part of themselves that is really both an asset and can be a liability. And I wanted to do it through an archetype that was adorable, that was kind of cute. You could relate to it. You could understand it. You can laugh about like all the mistakes that it's making at work. You can relate. You can totally get what's happening. And yet you can't hate it because it's cute. And you know that it's going to transform, and it does transform. And some of our career creatures actually visually transform. Blind Batty, when she overcomes her lack of awareness, she loses her blindfold. Foggy, when he gets clear on his career direction, he loses the fog around his head and you can see his head. And so for me, that was originally just an idea, and I had really early sketches hand-drawn sketches of the creatures, and I tried them out in my last live challenge. I think it was the product director challenge among in front of over 100 participants. And I was just amazed in the engagement, and people loved taking the quiz and ranking themselves and figuring out which creature. At the time they were called monsters, but then as we were going through the copywriting process, there's a company called Monster, obviously, and they have tons of trademarks, and I didn't want them going after me, especially since this concept is also in the sphere of careers. So career creature has a nice sound to it, alliteration. That's how kind of we renamed them to creatures. But at the time they were monsters, and people were like, I I am this monster or I am that monster. And yes, that, I see that happen to me. And I see now my colleagues, I can tell which one they're acting. And when I wrapped up the last live cohort of the Denali Executive Accelerator, I asked the people in there, like, what would you have wanted to have seen that you didn't see? And a bunch of them piped up and said, like, Lisa, we never worked with the monsters. What happened to the monsters? Bring them back. We want to understand them better. We want to be able to work with them and develop a better relationship with them. So that's how this thing began. I hired the illustrator. We have actually developed a whole book worth of stories, of cartoons about each of the 7 creatures, developed the world around them. They all work for a company called Fang Unicorn Technology, which is a breakthrough AI and ML multi-billion dollar company that looks to change the gravitational field on Earth. And it's founded by Yvon, the founder, who advises presidents. He has a controlling stake in the company. He deep ocean dives, flies to space. And what else does he do? Like races sports cars, I think. Then there's Stan, the manager, who is, of course, a thought leader. He is also a servant leader and a coach. So really taking all of these archetypes and all of these stereotypes about life in Silicon Valley, about life in a tech company, about working with people in tech, and really through the lens of humor, looking at it and having a laugh about it and being able to recognize our own patterns and our own behaviors and the traps that we fall into with the 7 career creatures. That was a creative idea. That was a vision I had. I wrote down the script for all of the cartoon stories. So we have developed about 28 of them. So they'll be coming out in our LinkedIn page. There's the Career Creatures LinkedIn page. You can find it on LinkedIn. There's also an Instagram channel, Career Creatures, all one word. So those will be coming out periodically, weekdays for now, for the next few weeks. And I'll see where I take it from there. My intention right now, as people are going through the intake quiz and diagnosing their creatures, they're getting the 5-part free email course about how to tame the creature. There's a lot more opportunity, again, for community-based work, for a deeper course and exploration that I'm really comfortable with working with communities and groups. That is going to hopefully get launched at some point later this year. That will provide additional depth and understanding. But where Career Creatures fits with everything else that I'm doing, again, think of this as like the all of the tools that I've seen clients want to use in order to climb up their career mountain. So marketing is a part of that, how you market yourself on LinkedIn. Another part is how do you connect with your authentic power? And to do that, you have to develop a relationship with your fears and your unconscious habits and what those are. So overcoming limiting beliefs, higher self-awareness is super, super important. So that's a core part of leveling up in your career. It is. As are, I have a number of things that I've already produced or planning to produce that are around the areas of power, marketing, negotiation, market updates and market awareness, functional expertise. So I've said I don't want to compete with the product schools out there. I'm not going to teach producty stuff, but many of our community members are great experts in product. And so they've been offering workshops and classes to our community that are functional, based on their functional expertise. And so, as all of these pieces are coming together, they're really there to support the full process of climbing, the full journey of going through your career. And that's what I'm there to build. I don't want to be selling coaching or services. I want to be enabling transformation, and I want to be inviting experienced tech professionals to be part of an experience and part of a community. So again, it's not just spaghetti on the wall, although it may seem a little bit, I think I'm confusing LinkedIn's algorithm right now, because it's like, what is she? She went from like writing about this one thing that we had like honed the algorithm for her. Now she's like posting cartoons. It's like,
Break it, Lisa. Just
what
break
is
it.
going
Break
on?
the algo. We'll help you.
I know, it's like, it may seem a little bit like not necessarily connected. Like, okay, how do we go from keywords for LinkedIn profiles to unicorns and cartoons? But in my mind, I can kind of see full the full journey and how these pieces fit together. And again, it all comes from daily and weekly work with human beings, with actual clients. I haven't gone a week without having a live call with a group of people that I've worked with for the last 3 years. So this comes all from practice. This is constantly A/B test. This is constantly put to practice. Nothing is conceived in my mind in isolation. Everything is iterated on with my community. So
Got it.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about blind spots and blind baddie, and Natalie and Rent. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but Natalie and Rent are commenting that so hard to market yourself. So true about marketing yourself for a job. It is totally a shift 100%. And then Rent is saying, oops, come on, StreamYard, you can do it. I used to laugh when people talked about personal brand. Man, I was wrong. And so, do you consider marketing yourselves one of those blind spots? Or what advice do you have to give to people who are like, I don't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you want, we can bring the career creatures on screen and I'll introduce them to you, because one of them is actually very much about that, about not understanding how you should be marketing yourself. So, and you can go to this website and take the quiz. It's actually quite fun and people have been enjoying it. In fact, I'll tell you some interesting stories about what's coming out of it. So in order, in no particular order, the creatures are, so we have Dear Whelm. Dear Whelm's Dear Whelm doesn't have any boundaries, and its solution to everything is just work harder. Next, we have my own personal career creature, which is the Bear Knot. The Bear Knot is angry and pissed off. Control wants to have everything under control because they've been ignored, talked over, or their ideas have been stolen in the past. The Sabotiger is really insidious. You may not know you're doing this, but this is like going for goals, but not really necessarily 100% wanting to achieve the goal, but being worried that if you achieve the promotion or the goal, that you're going to actually have to work harder and not see your family. You're going to burn out. You're going to have to deal with politics. So you kind of half-heartedly go after things, but then like, sabotage yourself from actually really, truly 100% going after them and achieving them. The perfectionist is an epidemic. This is like in the community, my community, we're referring to ourselves as Perfectionists Anonymous. And perfectionist is very self-explanatory, never feels ready, constantly trying to get things right. Interestingly, a number of people contacted me last night that were taking the quiz, and they said, Lisa, can you please share? Because of the limitation of the quiz tool that I'm using, I'm not able to give you your scores per creature. It has to be like, here's your top creature, work with that. But a number of people contacted me and said, Lisa, can we please have like the full quiz with all the weights so we can score ourselves? Because we want to make sure we're doing the quiz right. They're all perfectionists. And I'm like, yeah, you're doing it right because the output is this. And
So
you're asking me to like,
self-diagnosed. That's hilarious.
right? Hang on Kitty is just what it says it is. It's just tunnel vision, clinging on anything it has, because it just has like a deep fear of survival and security attachment to security. This often comes like when we've had these kind of survival fears when we were younger, or if we have to take care of someone that is relying on us, or we just have caretaking responsibilities. This is kind of like can sometimes lead to blind loyalty where you're completely disregarding any other opportunities other than what's happening at your company. And if you're not like leveling up there, you end up convincing yourself to stay because that's the best thing you have, and you're loyal, and is the security and all that.
And sorry, Lisa, I'm going to interrupt. So Natalie's saying, I love this. It reminds me of 16 personalities,
Oh,
quiz a little.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, this is not, again, please don't think that this is like replacing a thing. Again, this is like a tool for awareness. And I've tested this a bunch, and I've seen it work, and I've seen people have like huge ahas from it. So I'm offering it. Yeah, it's been fun working on it. So Blind Baddie is do you know, Jay-Z, have you seen the person at the company who's so good at what they do, their boss is never going to replace them, is never going to promote them up, because it's such a pain in the butt to find somebody who's so good at what they're doing that they're just going to stall the person for as long as they can and not move them up.
I think it's about that person getting mentorship and sponsorship for the next level, but I don't know that people are against that.
So the person may think they're going to get recognized, but they're essentially digging themselves into a hole by constantly being the best at what they're doing. And instead of mentoring and then training somebody else to take that over, they're like constantly showcasing their existing skills. The way I talk about it is when you're climbing a mountain, and when I climbed Denali, that was like a 3-week expedition, and you first start lower on the glacier, and you're wearing snowshoes, and you're using ski poles. So it's a different equipment because the terrain is different. But as you go up, you need to transition to crampons and ice axes. And that transition of equipment, oftentimes in mid-career, means transitioning from an IC to a manager. And this is like the person who's on their snowshoes with their ski poles trying to go up the ice. It's like, no, you belong down on the mountain. Like, you're really good walking with snowshoes. We know you're the best at walking with snowshoes. You know the best at doing this. So Blind Baddie is really the lacking of awareness. And sometimes we feel we know what they need from us to be able to level up. And oftentimes, there are unspoken requirements for what it would take for you to get promoted. And oftentimes those requirements are not fair. But being blind to them puts you in a bad place of being stuck and being resentful. So you might as well acknowledge that these are the unspoken requirements. See if you are able and willing to fulfill them. And if not, just move on. Right? So it's about awareness.
I'm going to interrupt you. So, in the audience, please comment if you've taken the quiz, what your creature is. And if that's a little scary, because I know some of these are a little anxiety provoking, comment if you've ever worked with someone in your team, in your close, pod that has exhibited any of these blind spots. And I'm sure all of us have. So keep going, Lisa. Sorry.
Yeah. And JC, I'll take you to task about, it's not, there's nothing wrong about having anxiety, but I want to challenge you to really ask yourself, why are you afraid of looking at these creatures? Like, what is the fear that, like, what are you afraid you're going to find out? And this is a question for everybody, because all of us, these are blind spots for a reason, because we avoid looking at them. There are the flip side of a lot of our strengths, right? But they're not in essence negative. They're just an additional dimension of us that we need to understand how it manifests in order to be able to modulate its expression, so that we are no longer, preventing ourselves from going forward in our careers. So the last creature, the one that relates to, I don't know how to market myself. A lot of people right now are in this fog. It's called foggy. And foggy just has FOMO.
Oh.
Foggy has FOMO because it has always been on the program from society ever since school, and then grad school, being put in a post, post grad school, intake structured program for whatever is next. There's always been a path for foggy. And at some point that path disappears, because now everybody's, paths start diverging. There's no one thing that like 90% of us do that's the same. And it tries to find those paths, right? It says, what is the hottest company? What is the hottest function? What is the hottest vertical right now? Like, where should I go? And you won't believe how many of my clients end up in companies and roles that they turn around and tell me, Lisa, I do not know how I got myself in here. Like, I'm not interested in this industry. I'm not interested in this um, market. How do I get out? I don't want to be pigeonholed, because they're now finding themselves in an industry they don't like, in a company they don't like, in a vertical they don't like. And they're realizing they're starting to specialize that way. And they're like, whoa, 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 I don't want to market myself that way. I just want to be seen as this unique unicorn that can do anything, and not this. I've just been doing it because I don't know. So, so really, like, the question about how to market yourself is, a lot of people are afraid because they think, oh, I'm going to limit myself. I'm going to limit myself by saying, I specialize in this vertical. I'm really the best in mobile development, because what if, I want to be considered for a product that's not with mobile apps? Yes, but at some point, you got to decide if you would rather um, be, useful, and you would rather have, a very clearly articulated purpose, and an ability to help someone, a company, or a team in a specific way. Think of it as secret powers rather than, hey, I can do anything. Like, your secret powers, you've actually have done certain things in certain industries and verticals and markets that somebody desperately needs. Somebody desperately needs your expertise. So, Jay-Z, your design background, somebody desperately needs that in the right context. So now you're saying, okay, AI and design, how does that interact? There's a lot of huge debate right now about art and AI. And I say art like in general. I'll give you an example of the
Yeah.
career features, right? So when I first went on Upwork and I submitted a call to for submissions to illustrators, I had in my mind, almost to the T, the same exact way that you see these creatures. I had them visualized in my mind. That was my idea. Then I found an illustrator. Thank goodness, most of the illustrators who submitted proposals were going to use AI tools.
I see.
Thank goodness I found Felipe, who had hand drawn everything. And he actually created these without any involvement from AI. So I was able to take those creatures and submit them to the copyright office to get copyrighted. And I realized I had dodged the bullet because did not know that you're not able right now to copyright any work that has used AI in its production. But then the question becomes like, what is art? Is art my original idea that was in my head and I just didn't have the tools to put it on paper? So I hired Felipe, the illustrator, to do it for me, but I could have hired AI to do it for me. These are interesting questions and interesting conversations, and there's a slew of companies that are dealing with these questions in a very critical way. So somebody with a visual design background or whatever like background they have working with art, working with copyright, for example, being able to come into a company that is producing AI tools, for example, like DALL-E or any of the other ones that are, creating works of art, and be able to have that understanding, that's critical expertise that's required, right? So think of yourself as possessing all these superpowers. And while you can use any of them in any kind of combination, understanding their strength and understanding what these superpowers are empowers you to then choose the one that you most like to use, or the way that you most like to be seen, or the opportunities that you most like to be found for, and tailor your profile and your content creation on LinkedIn like the same way that you're doing. So you don't have to do the enormous work that Jay-Z is doing now by having your own podcast and show. That's a ton of work, I can tell you. As a podcaster who's had 130 episodes produced, it's a ton of work. But even posting stuff on LinkedIn and putting in your features section is a huge, huge piece, again, of your marketing. Because remember, the hierarchy of the profile is exactly how much time a recruiter or somebody is going to spend looking at you, starting from a headline, then going through. Actually, the features section is pretty high up there. I believe it's even above the about section, work experience, all that. So the higher, the more important, the more visible. And again, you have the power to profile yourself in a certain way. That's not necessarily going to exclude you from pursuing other opportunities, but is going to attract a specific set of the opportunities that you most want to have.
Wow, there's so many things there I relate to. I'm going to start with Natalie. So she's a TikTok influencer, and now she runs community for a venture platform. So Natalie, thanks for joining us today. And you'd commented that I know a lot of people who are foggy as Gen Z, and her being an influencer, I think she's done a great job identifying her own voice. But then others who are on TikTok or just any platform, they might want to be that Yvonne or trying to be someone else that they should be. Is that what you're saying about foggy, that a lot of people haven't found their own voice?
What's interesting with Gen Z, so I have a few clients who are Gen Z, and in fact, Career Creatures I had a Gen Z intern. I had 3 Gen Z interns over the summer. One of them was specifically, she came to work with me on Career Creatures because she was a TikTok influencer with 65,000 followers on TikTok. This person's 16 years old. She would oversleep half of our meetings, just not wake up for them. Like half of the calls we took in the car, she was moving around. It was a different way of kind of working with her ideas and creativity. And she had a ton of really, really amazing ideas for me. So I valued her and I appreciated that. And I think her secret power in somebody who's managed to build an audience, especially on a platform like a TikTok, like LinkedIn, that's a very important superpower. That is a superpower in and of itself. Attention is the new currency of the new world, and audience is the new wealth. If you build an audience, you can monetize it like hundreds of ways. And so having the experience of having built an audience, Natalie, is an extremely, extremely useful skill. Again, that can be monetized directly by monetizing the audience. But that can also, if you want to work in tech or work, have a full-time job, you can have your pick from companies that want to attract influencers as clients. There's a ton of companies that are serving influencers. There's platforms that have teams that are, creating products and engaging with influencers, making sure they stay happy and create engagement on the platform. So your knowledge of having been an influencer, of having proven, what it takes to build an audience, what it takes to build engagement, especially with certain media like video, you can, again, highlight that as skill keywords, audience building, audience engagement, influencer, TikTok, content creation, all of these things. And I have a specific method that I teach, and I'll be reopening my needle in a haystack course soon. We're going through the first group right now. They're fantastic. Everybody's like having their hands on ChatGPT 4, like crunching keywords and figuring things out. We'll reopen that soon in November, so make sure to follow me. And if you take the Career Creatures quiz, you'll also end up on my email list. And the email list is how I communicate with my community anytime we have new things that are coming up. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But you have a ton of assets. And I think Gen Z in general are very, very ambitious. They want to be their own boss. And that's fine. The biggest thing that I find that they're missing is just life experience. So they're trying to define themselves a little bit too early. I say if you're in your 20s, go out there, get as much experience as you can, learn, try a bunch of new things. The reason why I say I work with people with over 8 years of experience is not because I'm being exclusionary to the Gen Zers, but because I find that once you have done a bunch of stuff, then you have things to work with to specialize around. Specializing too early or trying to kind of only do one thing when you're in your 20s, I think maybe counterproductive. You just have to experiment when you're that young.
So for foggy, I think what I'm trying to get at is, what is the flip side? When you're managing people, you don't tell people they're foggy, right? Like, okay, let me take that back. Some people can only hear it when you tell them that directly, that they're foggy. Like, they're so blind. But other people would rather you reveal the upside. What happens when foggy gets out of the fog?
Yeah, foggy gets out of the fog. He actually looks pretty. It's a fox. I don't have the image here, but it's powerful. It's powerful. When a person connects to their purpose, magic happens. They can bear almost anyhow. When you know your why, you can bear almost anyhow. A person on purpose is a person on fire. And that is true in your career. That is true in life in general. And I find that, I would never, these tools were not intended to be used as management tools. I would never advocate you or anyone else going to your direct reports and saying, hey, you have a case of this thing. You should go and take this quiz because I think you're a blind baddie. Like, that's inappropriate. That's not what the intended use of this tool is. The use for this tool is mostly for self-awareness and self-discovery, because once you understand your own blind spot, you'll be able to see everybody else's blind spots, not from the perspective of here's what they're doing wrong, let me tell them so they can correct themselves, but really encouraging them to go through the process of exploration and discovery themselves. Because if people are telling us that there's something wrong with us, we will get defensive. We will not adopt this. We will not change, right? To transform somebody, you don't tell them to change. You inspire them to discover ways that they could, be better, could use their strengths better, could grow. Right. And if they go through this process themselves and discover these things for themselves, then they'll be motivated to change. Change is hard. change is hard. There's a reason why these are ingrained habits. It's like, on a sled, on a ski slope or on a snow slope, if you see like, 100 sleds have gone through the same spot. Now, if you're sledding down, it's going to be really, really hard for you to get out of that groove. Um, this is not a switch. This is not easy. This is a process, which is why I'm again bringing these creatures to our awareness, because it's a lifelong work with them. I still have bear knot. Like I will still get, and bear knot is about, again, the reason why I have it. And when you take the quiz, they'll ask you to go through, like there'll be a 5-part course where I'll walk you through like how do you discover the origin of the creature. For me, the origin of bear knot was in 7th grade. I submitted a speech proposal to my school for the reopening celebrations of my American school. And each class had to submit a proposal. And first we had within my own class, we had 2 submissions, me and this other girl. And people really loved my story. They really loved my speech the most. The challenge was that I was suffering from childhood stutter. So I was stuttering, trying to deliver. I was emotional and stuttering, trying to deliver the speech. And they said, well, Lisa's speech is the better one, but this other person can deliver it without stuttering. So they decided to give that person my speech and have her deliver it at the school submission thing, so that and represent both of us. The problem was when she went to deliver the speech in front of the whole school, everybody was in awe. They were like, what an amazing speech, what an amazing story. And she did not mention my name. She sat down, and for years afterwards, people were like, that was beautiful. That was a beautiful speech. She's so creative. She's so amazing. And I was just like, oh. Maybe
now
I
I can understand
13
why
at the
you
time.
hate digital fakes, right? Because in AI, that would totally be possible. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's the origin. And so right now with me, with bear knot, like I sometimes tend to jump into defensiveness because I don't want someone who doesn't have, the same idea or creativity to lay claim to my ideas anymore. I don't want to be talked over or ignored or, and I get triggered. So I was the only woman on an executive team at a company, and I had been talking about an idea for a while now. And then during one of the meetings, I had mentioned it again, and people were just like, their eyes are glazed over. And then this other guy next to me mentions, like, he rephrases the same idea in his own words. And they're like, oh my God, you're such a genius. Oh, we should totally do that. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, am I invisible? Like, why are you not recognizing me? And that is why I can sometimes be fierce. And, sometimes I'm told that I am overreacting, or that I'm too defensive, or that I'm aggressive, or that I don't assume the best. If somebody rolls from the sidelines from the CEO's office and wants to make a bunch of changes to my very well thought out project, and they're ridiculous, and I'm not going to tolerate that. And so my bear knot is very, very strong. But I also understand that can alienate people, that can put them on the defensive, that can make them run away and not be willing to engage in open conflict with me because I have such a strong personality. They'll run to their bosses, and then their boss will come to me and try to mediate. So it comes with a whole lot of costs that have hurt me in my career. There have been times where I've lost opportunities, I've lost money because somebody thought I was too difficult to work with because of bear knot. And I didn't understand it then. I took it all personally. It was like, they're not being fair. The truth is, how we portray ourselves is not the same way others perceive us. Communication is very subjective. You may think you're saying one thing, but the person sees and hears something completely different, or you're coming with the best of intentions, but they're perceiving that you're being aggressive, right? So that's why I'm saying it's important for us to have compassion and just understand our own blind spots that way, because when we do, we'll be able to see everybody else's blind spots, not in a, hey, look, you got spinach in your teeth type of way, but more like, hey, I totally get it. Like, you must have been hurt or something must have happened for you to react this way. Like one of my clients, and some of these creatures are based on actual clients I've worked with, like even the physical representation.
Thanks for telling us these stories. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, one of my clients, very, very talented. Her current manager wanted to promote her and was pushing her, hey, go for it. I'm going to put you up. And she was resisting. She's like, I don't know if I want to be a manager. And we dug into it. And she's like, well, my last manager, my last company was really, really demeaning to me. And he really was extremely toxic, and he played politics, and I saw the way he was, and I just didn't want to be part of that. I didn't want to become a toxic person like him, like completely politicized and completely awful. And in her mind, she kind of, hers was a saboteur thing. In her mind, it was like, okay, well, I guess I don't really want to become a manager. And so we worked through it. And then she understood, was like, okay, well, I drew the conclusion. you know, if I, like it wasn't conscious. She just didn't want, like she was just hurt, and she didn't want to be part of the whole thing that had left such bad feelings in her. So I find that when we start understanding ourselves this way, we understand that we're all on the same boat. We're all imperfect human beings. We're all trying our best, and nothing is personal. Everybody's just trying to do the best that they can with what they've got. That's it.
I love that reframe, because it's not like people are foggy because they don't want their passion career. It's maybe because they've been in such structured,
Yes.
postdoc environments that they've never been allowed or had to develop the skill of finding their own path. And for
Yes.
them to find that is very uncomfortable, like getting out of your comfort zone. And so it's not a blame on them.
No.
I love that.
It's beautiful. Yeah. So Jay-Z, tell me, why were you afraid to take the Career Creatures quiz?
Well, I'm going to talk about a thing, and I'm going to come back to answer your question. I think the short answer is that I always believe in leading with the positive, especially if you're managing people or you're trying to change someone's attitude. And so Eric Moore is a introvert coach who was on the podcast maybe 10 episodes ago, and he has this whole introvert coaching program to help VP plus or introvert leaders be as successful as extrovert leaders. And so he had this whole concept that extroverts were dominating, not listening, that they were cruel, maybe unintentionally. And so we had this long LinkedIn chat, like, in the comments section of one of his posts, about how I thought he could multiply his business by coaching not only introverts, but also extroverts. Because extroverts suffer from self-confidence issues. They feel like if they stop putting on the show, no one's going to like them for who they truly are. And that he could like 2x or 10x his coaching base from the 10% of people who are introvert leaders to add the 90% of people who are extrovert leaders. So that extroverts would have real relationships authentically, but introverts would have a platform to market themselves or get other people to market them as sponsors. And so I just really advocate for the balance of positive and negative, because there's just a lot of negative right now in society. So I think, just to answer your question, to summarize, that's why I was a little afraid to take the quiz, because it's hard to self-identify within anxiety without seeing. I'd much rather see the positive side of like when Foggy is this like polished fox and he's like, on the stage and everyone loves him.
Yeah. So what I heard you say is that you want to see the transformation in order to then kind of say, okay, now that I see this creature has transformed, has managed to kind of get out of this trap, and I don't mind kind of looking at what the trap is. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you've led people up to Denali, like you've led them out of the trap. And so
Mm,
for them, that's the carrot that's as
mm,
important as
mhm.
the stick.
Thank you for the feedback. Some of the cartoons that I'm developing have transformations in them. Some of them just illustrate traps because these are very short cartoons. And, I don't have the time or budget to develop them into super long stories. But um, I think what you're saying is powerful. People resonate um, with the transformation and being able to see, like, hey, this person was just like me. And look at them. They managed to kind of get clarity or overcome. So here's how Foggy looks like after it's gotten clarity. It's great feedback. Thank you for that.
Thanks for listening to it. The show's all about founders take customer feedback and pivot. And I know you've thought about all of this before. And, like from a gaming perspective, I'm sure you take
Mhm.
characters that have no gold coins to characters that at the top of the leaderboard. So it's up to you how you want to, if you want to,
Yeah.
implement.
It's interesting. I'd never heard explicitly that feedback before. I think the people, when they see the characters, they kind of recognize, they were like, oh, I see this person's having issues. Or this character's having issues. I don't think they see them as threatening. You're the first person that has expressed this, which is why I wanted to ask you, because I hadn't heard that reaction before. I'm sure you're not the only one. Um, but it's interesting because, you know, the perception of like, is this negative? Is this positive? I think, again, is interesting to me to like observe, how the perception is formed.
Right. Whether people immediately attach sentiment, negative or positive. If we're talking about NLP,
Yeah.
whether there's a sentiment at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it is important to illustrate the transformations. But it's hard. I think the challenge that I have is when introducing a new world with a new set of characters is very much like designing a game. You kind of have to set the foundation. You have to set the rules, like who's what are they doing, and then you can work on developing the story and the characters to transform. If this was a very widely known set of characters like Homer Simpson, The Simpsons, or the Muppets, like you already have a bunch of context and knowledge around them. So you're able to kind of understand if they're doing something different, but without the context of like where they came from and what is their original relationship with the world, it's hard to put the transformation in perspective. So there's a little bit of a timing challenge that I'm dealing with in introducing the transformations.
I think you're saying the end can look different for different people, or when do you?
It's without the person understanding the character, without you understanding the character and what they're going through and the traps that they're falling and why they're falling in those traps, you cannot relate to that character. So their transformation will be meaningless to you.
I get that. Yeah. So, I think you commented on a post that I made with illustration of a podcast. And I didn't know at the time you were illustrating, career creatures, right? I didn't make that connection. But that's what you're talking about, is that visually the connection might not land because it's not like apples to oranges. It's not a meme or an analogy that we already have in the model.
So the way that I like to think of it is humans, we're very much like monkeys in the sense that we're attracted to ourselves. We're attracted to talking about ourselves, reading about ourselves, understanding ourselves better. Um, so we perceive everything through the lens of us. What does this mean to me? How does this make me look? Um, you know, how does this reflect on me? And so when my initial, like for me to be able to offer this as a developmental tool to you or anybody else, you have to develop a relationship between that tool or these creatures and your own world. You have to say, I relate, or I see myself in this creature, or I struggle with the same thing, or I feel the same way as this creature. And then then you become invested in the character, just like in a game. You can't care about a game if you're not investing, if you're not like feeding your pets in the game or buying property. And I mean, it's a basic psychology and game development, right? You need to have the person invest in this world, invest in the set of creatures. And if you're like skipping to, like, if we were to skip like Lord of the Rings or any hero's journey, if we were to skip through the end, we'll be like trying to get on the cruise. Let's say we're going from Seattle to Alaska. It's trying to like just going to the pier and saying, okay, well, the cruise arrives back in Seattle. So here we go. We took the cruise. We're back here. We accomplished our goal. We arrived back in Seattle, and you miss the whole experience. You miss the whole journey, the whole transformation, the whole hero's journey. You miss that. And so if you're just showing, okay, here's the creature starts, it's confused, it's got a fog around its head. And then here it is without the fog around its head. It's like, okay, whatever, right? It's not meaningful because you're not feeling this person's struggle or this creature's struggle. You're not empathizing with their pain. You're not saying like, I know this is so hard and this feels awful. And unless you relate to that creature at the time of their struggle, it's going to be hard for you to derive meaning or inspiration from the transformation, which is why, as I'm introducing this world to everyone, I have to be careful not to fast forward too quickly, to be like, and here's how you get out of it.
Oh, you mean like people won't do the transformative work? They'll just be like, oh, well, I can
Yeah.
get on the stage. That's not
Yeah.
me.
Because the mind is great at rationalizing. They're like, oh, wait a minute. She said we should have a career plan. Okay. I'll put together a career plan. 1, 2, 3. Great. Now I have a career plan. Now I'm clear.
I see.
So they're shortchanging their transformational journey by looking at the outcome of how the creature is changing and then trying to say, okay, well, that's easy. I understand how that happens. Or they don't care because they're like, some bat with its, eyes covered with a blindfold. Why should I care what happens that she loses her blindfold? Like, a thing I don't care about. Like, what is this thing? I don't like if a person who doesn't know you calls you and says, "Hey, I'm never going to talk to you again," you'll be like, "Okay." But if a person, a close friend, it says, "Hey, I'm not going to ever talk to you again," you're gonna experience something, right?
You're so right. So in all the groups that I've moderated and teams I've seen, people try to skip steps. I mean, if they can, they will. Like 99% of people will try to skip and shortcut. So you're saying that showing the reveal is kind of giving them an excuse. That's really interesting. And
it's cheating you from the journey. It's like so let's take an example that, I said the cruise example with like, okay, we'll just go to the pier in Seattle and pretend we went to Alaska and back. And here we are, the outcome is we're back in Seattle. That is not the same as going on the cruise and transforming, having new experiences and memories created and meeting new individuals on the cruise and being changed as a result of that experience when you come back to Seattle. Same thing with Denali. Denali is one of the 7 summits. It's the tallest mountain in North America and is considered to be, by some people, some climbers, more difficult to climb than Everest because there's no porters, there's no Sherpa. It's very cold, almost in the Arctic Circle. And so there's a lot of people that I've seen, including a woman who had climbed Everest but was sent back from our expedition because she was not prepared for Denali, is they want to have climbed Denali. They just want to check the darn thing off their bucket list and be like, I summited all 7 summits, but they really don't have any relationship or any desire to actually climb it. And you transform, like we were on the summit for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes maybe. But
That's
the
it.
transformation and the memories I have from that experience were from the whole time. The first time I saw the mountain and I got like
Ah.
really, I got the pit in my stomach of like, oh, this is so scary, but I want to climb it, to preparing, and 10 months of prep and climbing five other peaks and getting on the expedition, and the 3 weeks of climbing and, enduring like all kinds of difficulties and challenges. You get transformed. You become out of this a different person. So it's not just about like, oh, okay, well, Lisa climbed Denali. Now she's got this thing checked off. It's not about checking things off. It's about going through the process of working with the creature, going through the process of discovery, of sitting with it, of being aware of it, of noticing things. So that's kind of what I mean, like not taking away the experience out of life.
It sounds like a journey we should all be grateful to have the opportunity to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm so grateful to you. I mean, look at like this like the way that you are and what you're trying to create and the types of conversations that you're interested in and the work that you're doing to organize this, to get interesting speakers, to prepare them, to market, to put things together. It's like a full-time job. And you're showing up um you're showing up as a person who cares. It was really interesting to talk to.
Oh, well, thank you. I do put a lot of work into the episodes, and some people want to come on and just talk about what they've already talked about. I'm like, no, this is about something new. So you're right.
Yeah.
I am interested in thought leaders like you. Thank you.
And I think the what you get to take away from this is that like the way that you find meaning, for example, if I could like try to offer some impressions, is like through meaningful engagement and meaningful conversation. Like long form content is not for everyone. Even like the idea of like in shaking things up and making things interesting, even the way that you're showing up with the sparkly glasses and the roses in the background, it pops. It's a pop of color. Um it's what I'm also hoping to bring to the kind of bland world of LinkedIn through the cartoons with cats and tigers in them.
I love them. It comes from your gaming background, but I think there's an additional level of art and mastery and authorship there.
It's the intention, right? So your intention of like, I'm going to have a bunch of pink roses, I'm going to put sparkly glasses, and I'm going to have interesting conversations with founders. I'm not going to be afraid to go into questions that make me uncomfortable or the other person uncomfortable. That's a rare interview skill, Jay-Z.
Oh, well,
It is
thank
rare.
you. I'm a trained anthropologist from Stanford, but I think that meaning is different for everyone, to your
Yeah.
point. And for me, meaning is about innovation. And I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. I just think that you have some amazing product here that can lead so many people through a dark, dark place.
I'm
Yeah.
not easy to make uncomfortable. You didn't make me uncomfortable at all.
Okay.
I can be
I was like, oh
I
no.
can be I can be very happy as a clam being uncomfortable. In fact, I thrive on that because it is in the discomfort that we find growth.
I think that's what you're saying with all of these creatures. They're all
Mhm.
uncomfortable parts of ourselves that if we don't kick them, we'll continue to be uncomfortable. But then maybe it's more painful to stay stuck at the bottom of the mountain.
And that's a very important point. the pain, the threshold of pain, you will never change until the pain becomes too hard for you to bear. We're just creatures of comfort. That's how it works. Something needs to become so painfully unbearable that it's less painful to change. Right? So for all of you who are experiencing turmoil in the job market right now, personal turmoil possibly, or whatever, combination of multiple things, know this is what you signed up for on this life journey. It's the growth that comes from the periods of discomfort is what we all remember. It's not the times. It's not the times when we're sitting on the couch watching Netflix. God bless them, but like it's not the time when we were like comfortable and the days kind of blended in with each other. It's when we were on the slope of a mountain and we were cold and we were
Hungry.
hungry and we were about to pee in our pants and it was just, yeah. So those are the times that one of my mentors, she collaborated with me quite a bit over the last several years, is the first woman to climb Everest without oxygen. She and I have been
Wow.
on have been on some adventures together, and she calls it type 1, type 2, and type 3 fun.
Oh,
So
yeah.
type 1 fun is she calls it like, when you're skiing, it's like, okay, it's a bright blue day. Conditions are great. You're on the groomer. You're just skiing up and down the groomer a few times. It's the type of thing you'll never remember. You will forget it. You will be like, what day was that? Where was I even on that day? Type 2 fun is the type of fun that makes you uncomfortable but doesn't threaten your life or survival. And type 2 fun is the most transformational and memorable. Like, you are uncomfortable, something happens, but it ends up being epic. In some way or another, it ends up being epic. And type 3 fun is like, she talks about the time where she barely survived, like being hit by 7 avalanches, one after another, with another friend of hers, and they were
Oh my
in the middle
God.
of nowhere in the Indian Himalayas. And yeah, that's the type of fun you don't want to have, because oftentimes it's fighting for survival at that point. It's danger. It's life and death, right? But like, for most of us, we think that unless like, for most of us, we complain when we get into type 2 fun. It's not fair. It's uncomfortable. Why should I be laid off? Why should I have to look for a job? Why should I have to reorganize my whole business because the programs that I used to make are no longer as relevant as they were, a year ago? Why should I have to rethink everything? It's not fair, right? So we can spend our time kind of complaining to the universe, to anybody who's going to hear, or we can just roll with it and have some type 2 fun, and we'll be fine. We'll be
Yeah.
fine at the end of it.
I have to plug in. I'm going to ask you a question. Everyone who's still remaining in the audience, please ask your last question. We're going to do an outro soon.
Fantastic.
So for all those people who are not like podcasting, 100 episodes and not marketing themselves on LinkedIn, they never see themselves becoming so public. What's the first step? Because, for example, I have founders who pitch to investors like every day, but they're afraid of coming live on the podcast. Like, what is one piece of advice that you can give them?
2 pieces of advice. One is definitely tailor your LinkedIn profile. You don't need to go live to make sure you have a killer LinkedIn profile that is tuned to the right keywords so that recruiters looking on LinkedIn is the largest search engine for recruiters in the world. I estimate it has over 1 million recruiters on it, doing all kinds of searches, including for jobs that are posted. So that's not gonna require you to go live or do anything. It's just common sense, and it's going to pay off, whether you're actively looking for a job or not. The other one is, look, again, steel is forged in the fire. As I mentioned, I suffered from childhood stutter. And that stutter sometimes comes out. I still have troubles saying words like Google or leadership. I have to really relax my diaphragm to be able to say those words. But because of what happened again when my idea got stolen, and I really, really wanted to master that, I wanted to conquer the speech thing, that I ended up, in fact, by the end of high school, I ended up being selected as the graduation speaker for my whole school. And then 13 years later, or 16 years later, I came back to campus and I was invited as the keynote speaker for the graduation of the class then, replacing the president of the country because he had other engagements. So I was like the backup keynote speaker. But anyhow, like for me now, when I tell people I used to stutter, I used to be afraid of speaking. I used to be afraid of going live. I used to be afraid of speaking. They're like, nah, we don't believe you, Lisa, which is why I'm saying it's like, if you see the person after transformation, you're like, oh yeah, she's always been like that. It's always been easy for her. So think of this, like, the bigger the fear, the bigger the motivation for you to work on it and overcome it. Right? So all I can say is if people can overcome stutter to develop themselves into speakers, there's plenty of examples for that. Like, if you don't stutter, what's your excuse to not offer your ideas and your contribution to the world through whatever means possible, even if it means speaking?
Yeah, I think you're saying no one has any excuses about editing their skill list on LinkedIn. I mean, that should be like so easy for Foggy, but they should also take the challenge of becoming their fulfilled true selves. All right, I'm gonna read the last comment and then you can tell us, which website to go to or how we can help you. So I don't know who said this, but years ago I saw how two different colleagues of mine were very, very strong examples of two different personality types, and I found that very informative. But those were only two types. Lisa has done an amazing job here sketching out a wider possibility, and it's been great to see this launch months after she introduced me to this idea.
It's probably someone in my community. Thank you for watching.
Well, Lisa, this has been a journey of a podcast in itself, your story, and then our, conversation. How can people help you? What is the call to action?
The call to action is engage. I'd love to know if you're seeing my content. And again, I'm actively trying to build an audience. Engage. If you see my content, if you're liking it, please help me boost the LinkedIn algorithm. Like, comment, repost means the world to me. Again, my goal is to serve you, to truly, my dharma, I have found, is to just have an impact and take as many people to the tops of their mountain as I can. And I need your trust and your partnership in that. So if you're interested, definitely right now I'm redoing my main website. It's kind of funny because I'm going to be on the the Harvard Alumni Magazine is doing a feature on me. Now I have to race to make sure that CareerClimb.co is fully updated with my latest offerings because it's woefully out of date. Even the opt-in thing is somewhat broken. But anyhow, to get on my email list is the best thing. Go take the Career Creatures quiz. That'll give you hopefully awareness and information, will get you on my email list, and you'll be able to hear about the community I'm building, the other offers, and the other opportunities to learn together and help each other.
Wow. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for developing this. I know it's been many months and years of effort and original artwork as well. So everyone, please give Lisa the numbers that will really help her launch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jay-Z. I appreciate you. You're amazing.
No, you are. I think it's hard for me to take positive feedback on my own podcast because I don't know. It's a little nerve-wracking, but I appreciate your support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, I'm going to end the live stream, but we'll stay on for a minute just to talk about any clips or highlights that can be edited from this reel. All right. We'll say goodbye to everyone.